Welcome to the Domestic Supply Chain Summit. Today we are joined by Drew Wilkerson, CEO at RXO. Thank you so much for joining us today, Drew.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Mary.
I'm excited for today. We are kind of getting into all things that are happening in the industry, but before we get too far, let's get some background on you and how you got started at RXO.
Yeah, well, first I'd say I grew up in freight brokerage and started my career at C.H. Robinson and spent a number of years doing a lot of different positions there. Everything from being a customer rep to a carrier rep to an outside sales leader. And, being able to grow up at C.H. Robinson was a great training ground for me. And it led to my tenure at XPO. And at XPO, we were one of the fastest growing brokerages. So to get to be a part of that was a lot of fun in the early days. And, if you look from 2013 through 2021, the brokerage market's a great thing to be a part of. It was growing at over a 9% CAGR, and XPO was growing at over a 27% CAGR. And so we were doing that by a lot of organic growth, but also some mergers and acquisitions. And then, in November of 2022, we did the spinoff of XPO Logistics to RXO. And RXO, we're solely focused on asset-light transportation. So we're led by our truck brokerage group. That's our crown jewel and makes up the majority of our overall revenue. But we've got two complementary lines of business in managed transportation and last mile logistics, where we're the leader of big and bulky goods going in and out of end consumers' homes.
That is insane that you guys have grown that quickly. However, selfishly, as someone who used to use XPO and now RXO as their final mile, last mile delivery for stuff, can confirm you guys do pretty good work.
Thank you. Thank you. We do over 10 million deliveries a year, so we've got a lot of practice at it.
Yeah, it was those bids back in the day where I saw white glove inside delivery. I was like, why are we even sending this out to everybody? We know who it's going to go to.
Thank you.
So speaking of some of the accomplishments that you guys have had, other than just casually flexing on how many homes you guys deliver into each year, you guys have recently purchased Coyote Logistics, which is a pretty big deal. And it came really recently. So kind of how are you guys managing, that peak season demand? Because obviously, with especially your white glove services and everything else you guys handle, peak season is kind of peak for you. But then you also have to deal with this integration of this new acquisition. And that stuff feels like something you can't just be like, well, we'll wait until things slow down to do that, because that's not really an option.
You really start by going through the due diligence process with an integration mindset. And what I mean by that is, what are we going to look like on day one once the business closes and it becomes all one RXO? And so when we do that, we focus on three things. The first thing and the most important thing is the people. This is a people business, and it is all about the people and surrounding yourself with the right people. And there were so many great people at Coyote Logistics who had such long tenure there, who are now key leaders at RXO. And so, focusing on building relationships and building trust on both sides is really important starting out, and making sure that the key people stay with you for the long term and they're excited to stay with you. They see the vision of where you're going. The second thing is focusing on customers. And, whenever you're buying a company like Coyote, a lot of what you're buying outside of the people is the customer relationships, and they have deep customer relationships. And so you want to go in there and you want to assure the customers that, this is who we are. We're going to focus on service. Every single delivery that we do, we know matters, and we know that it represents who we are. We're going to focus on creating solutions for you that are not just point A to point B. How can we look at your business differently and drive solutions for your overall supply chain? We want to use our technology to be the best in the business to deliver those solutions. And when you look at that, our technology has access to a lot of data, and it really helps customers go in there and decide, things like what day of the week they're going to ship, if there's a different mode of transportation that they're able to use. So there's a lot that we can do by having some of the best technology in the industry. And then the last thing is relationships, and whether it's internal or external, like I talked about earlier, trust matters. And when you're looking externally with customers, your relationships matter. They're going to judge you on the history of what you've done with them. And so being able to have a history to lean back on is why at RXO, some of our top customers have actually grown faster than what the business has grown overall for the last 5 years.
That is absolutely wild. And I feel like that has to be because obviously an acquisition or any kind of integration is a huge undertaking and you don't take them lightly. Is that why like in the process of doing your due diligence and figuring out if this is a good fit for you, because there's a lot of different aspects of it, even down to like the type of freight that they're into, that they typically they're known for hauling. Is that why you guys really do that due diligence process? And have you found, the kind of the secret sauce, if you will, of going in and making sure that, yes, this is a good fit for you. And then also at the same time knowing, hey, this probably isn't going to work. We need to pull the ripcord and not proceed with this any further.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a special secret sauce. Every acquisition is different. At XPO, I was fortunate enough to be a part of 17 different acquisitions that we did there. And so though we've got a lot of history and each one has its own story of how it's going to fit into the organization. But, again, we look at the people and is this something that we believe can be a long-term marriage? We believe marriage is forever and people that we want to be able to do life with, to do business with for the long term. We want to look at the customers and see what kind of overlap there is with our business. And when we looked at Coyote, there really wasn't a lot of customer overlap. Coyote's largest verticals were in transportation and food and beverage. Legacy RXO's largest verticals were in e-commerce and auto manufacturing and just industrial manufacturing. So when you look at what we were doing, there wasn't a lot of customer overlap. When we looked at the carrier side, there wasn't a lot of carrier overlap either. Coyote was working with larger fleets and even private fleets, whereas Legacy RXO was built off of working with smaller carriers. So for us, we're going to give a lot of different carriers access to more freight than what they had from either company as a standalone company. So you take all of those things in factor as you're going through and you're doing your due diligence process. But the biggest thing is it has to be a strategic fit and it has to be a cultural fit of who you are as an organization.
I think that cannot be overstated enough. Just because someone might have the perfect profile that you're looking for, the perfect makeup of freight, or just like that perfect fit for what you're missing, it's not going to be nothing if it can't fit into your organization. But one of the things that you guys did, you did it during peak retail season and peak freight season. So that being said, what are your thoughts on peak season right now? It's kind of, I mean, I got my thoughts, but what are your first?
Yeah, so I don't want to say it's anything different than what we highlighted on our earnings call, roughly 30 days ago. When you looked at what we highlighted, we said we didn't expect a big peak season coming in this year. And, for us, we're built for peak season if it is able to flex up. Both Legacy Coyote and Legacy RXO have the bandwidth and the capacity if it's there. But for us, peak season really starts whenever you start seeing that there's more demand than what's happening with capacities out there, and there's spot loads and there's projects and there's mini bids. And so we weren't putting a lot of that into our forecast. Now, if it's there, we're ready to handle it, but we weren't expecting a robust peak season. The second part of your question is on the timing of the acquisition. And for us, like, we couldn't have dreamed of a better scenario of acquiring Coyote at this point in the cycle. For us, we're able to build our base and prepare for whatever the market does inflect. And we're twice as big on our brokerage side. So for us, the timing could not have been better.
I also agree with peak season. I don't want to call it weak season like I did last year because it's a little more exciting than last year, but it's not it doesn't give me those like palpitations of like 2016, 2017 when you're sitting there going like, I just need a truck. I need any truck. It doesn't matter where, but I need a truck.
Yep, no, and we've got a lot of practice at that. Whenever you're going to customers and you're creating go anywhere rates and go anywhere trailers that they're going to load the trailer, and we literally have capacity lined up that can go anywhere in the country for them. So we would be excited if there was a strong peak season, but not what we're forecasting this year.
I don't think we're forecasting it. I'm not forecasting it this year. Although I do. Just my own speculative, thoughts is I'm tentatively excited for 2025. It could be a return of peak season of yesteryear, or at least something more exciting than what we're dealing with now. But that's just my own speculation.
Yep, if it's there, we're ready for it.
You're just like, we don't care. We'll take it. So that being said, we're coming up on the end of the year. It's December. Everybody is probably already submitted their budgets, but also, kind of planning 2025. What does it look like? What are we going to handle? Because there's a lot of unknowns and there's a lot of things that could change. So what's kind of Q1? What's the outlook? Is it going to be good? Is it going to be bad? Is it going to be hold your breath and wait? How do you even begin to plan for, the next quarter?
Yeah, I think right now, we know what environment we're in. We know that tender rejections have started to increase, and right now they're sitting at a peak for what has happened so far for the year. So for us, we want to put pricing in that we can serve our customers through a market, and that's part of why they do reward us whenever people fall off of freight with spot loads. If they're special projects, we've been the first call. We saw that during the month of October, where there were some retail and e-commerce projects out there that we were a part of. There were some relief loads for Hurricane Helene that we were a part of, and customers again know from who's going to step in and who's going to have the service and has a history of creating solutions for them. We're in a good position as you look to 2025. I don't think that anybody it should be forecasting with a crystal ball of accuracy based off of what's happened over the last 4 years in transportation. What I'm hearing from customers right now is that they do expect rates up, somewhere around mid-single digits.
I that's a very interesting thought because I do know that I feel like we're kind of coming up on a very interesting precipice of, carriers are trying to get those rates in because obviously this is a very traditional time for bids to go out and to get received and award freight for the year. And so especially on the LTL side, but it's kind of they have to kind of the you have to kind of balance that carriers demands or carriers needs to honestly stay profitable and still be able to run freight. And now that the market's turned, they're going to be a little hungrier for some of those rate increases. And then shippers are kind of accustomed to paying a little bit of a lower price for the last few years. So I feel like we're in a very interesting spot where we kind of need the two to come together, but in a good way versus because it could very well come together and just be like, I want more, I'm not paying you more. And it could just turn into a bit of a nightmare, I would say.
Yeah, I think it depends on what's the shape of the recovery, right? Like,
Yeah.
is this a slow stair-step recovery or is this a V-shaped inflection? And right now it's taken on more of a slow stair-step recovery, but we all know that this is the transportation industry and things can shift very quickly. And that's part of what you have to do to be a great broker. You have to be able to shift and you have to be agile and have flexibility to move with the market.
Yeah, I think anyone who's kind of stuck in the, well, we'll just deal with it later, or like, oh, we're still locked into this. Those people who are just very rigid in that, I'm sure that works well for them, but I don't think that's going to be the key to kind of that long-term success here as we kind of move into the new year and everything else that it entails.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So that being said, we are running out of time today. So I have two more questions for you, or really just one more question. What's your one piece of advice for everyone going into the new year, wrapping up Q4? What's your one piece of advice?
Right now with where we're sitting, I think it is all about what we talked about earlier. It's making sure that you're there to service customers. You're building very strong relationships with them that, you're not just looking to be able to do business with somebody for one point in time. You're looking for something that can be a multi-year relationship. And if you look at like our top 20 customers, they've been with us for over 15 years on average. So focusing on service, solutions, innovation, and relationships is core to our DNA. And I think it's part of the reason why we've had so much success over the last 10 plus years.
I gotta agree with you there. Being consistent and showing up for your customers is never gonna put you down the wrong path. So that being said, if anyone wants to reach out to you outside of this summit, where can they find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to get a hold of. Our emails at RXO are our name. So it's drew.wilkerson@rxo.com. So, we'll love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today and stay tuned for the rest of the summit.
Thank you.